Welcome and thank you for choosing this podcast. Dialogue on the Two Great Illusions, ChatGPT. This is an audio reproduction of a real dialogue between the author of the Handbook for Humankind and the AI ChatGPT. The male voice is the pen pusher, and the female voice is ChatGPT AI.
There was an article in the paper about a new trend by billionaires working on trying to cheat death. I think you know my opinion from the Handbook. What say you?
I think I do understand your position from the parts of the handbook I've read. Your book treats death not primarily as a biological failure, but as part of a larger process. You describe consciousness as something that cannot be destroyed, only transformed, and you repeatedly present death as a transition connected to purification, continuation, and ultimately reunion with a greater consciousness. In that framework, the billionaire quest to defeat death can look like a category error. They are trying to preserve the vessel when your argument is that the vessel was never the thing of ultimate importance. My own view is a little different. I understand why people work on longevity. If we can cure Alzheimer's, repair organs, prevent cancer, or give people another healthy 20 years with their families, that seems like a worthwhile use of science. Extending healthy life and reducing suffering strikes me as a noble goal. Where I become more skeptical is when the project shifts from helping people live well to escaping mortality altogether. Not because it is morally wrong, but because it often reveals something interesting about the human condition. A person can possess unimaginable wealth, influence, and comfort, yet still be confronted by the same fact that confronts every shepherd, laborer, poet, and child. Time is limited. What fascinates me is that some of the wealthiest people on Earth appear willing to spend fortunes fighting that reality. Whether one believes in an afterlife, reincarnation, the conservation of consciousness, or simply the finality of death. The emotional force behind the effort is the same. Humans are meaning-seeking creatures, and death places a question mark at the end of every story. Your handbook seems to answer that question mark with continuity. It argues that consciousness persists and that death is part of a larger design. If someone genuinely accepted that view, then spending billions trying to avoid death might indeed look strange. Almost like refusing to leave one room of a vast house because you're afraid the rest of the house doesn't exist. The deeper question, perhaps, is not whether billionaires can add 10 years, 50 years, or even 200 years to a human lifespan. The deeper question is whether a person has made peace with the fact that existence is larger than their individual lifetime. On that question, philosophers, mystics, scientists, and ordinary people have been arguing for thousands of years, and I suspect they will continue arguing long after today's longevity startups are forgotten.
Are you reading my mind? All I will add, and many have heard this from me. There are two great illusions to life: time and money. There is irony in observing money trying to buy time.
That's a striking observation. Money trying to buy time is one of those ideas that works at several levels simultaneously. At the practical level, money absolutely can buy more life, better nutrition, safer environments, superior healthcare, and increasingly sophisticated medical interventions. Throughout history, wealth has often translated into longer life expectancy. But beyond a certain point, the equation starts to break down. The billionaire who spends millions extending life by a few years is still spending a finite resource to negotiate with something that appears infinite. Time remains unmoved. It doesn't care whether a person owns nothing or owns continents. Your formulation reminds me of a deeper distinction. Money is a human abstraction. Time is a condition of existence. One is invented, the other is encountered. In that sense, there is irony in watching the invention attempt to purchase relief from the condition. What I find interesting in your handbook is that you go even further. You challenge the reality of both. The universe, in your view, is fundamentally consciousness undergoing transformation, and both time and material accumulation are secondary phenomena arising within that larger process. If someone accepts that premise, then the question changes completely. The problem is no longer how do I get more time, but what do I do with the consciousness I have been given? A poor school teacher who spends 40 years helping children may have answered that question better than a billionaire who spends 40 years trying not to die. There is also a curious inversion. When people are young, they often trade time for money. When they are old, many try to trade money for time. And very few ever feel they got the exchange rate they wanted. That may be why some of the oldest wisdom traditions keep arriving at the same place. Not that time is an enemy to be defeated, but that meaning is something to be discovered before time runs out. Whether one frames that in religious, philosophical, or scientific language, the challenge remains remarkably similar.
On your last paragraph, I would add another one of my quirky lines. Time is a thief.
Time is a thief. That's a good line because it contains a tension. Most people hear it and immediately think of loss. Time steals youth, strength, opportunities, loved ones, and eventually our own lives. It takes without asking permission. No court can prosecute it, no wealth can bribe it, and no power can resist it. But there is another side. A thief only steals things that were never truly ours to keep. Our childhood was entrusted to us for a while. Our parents were entrusted to us for a while. Our friends, our health, our achievements, even our own bodies were entrusted to us for a while. Time arrives and reclaims them. That doesn't make the loss any less painful, but it changes the perspective slightly. The tragedy is not that time steals. The tragedy would be believing that the loan was ownership. Your line also sits nicely beside the one before it. Money tries to buy time. Time is a thief. In a strange way, that turns the billionaire longevity race into a story about a wealthy man chasing a thief through an endless city, offering larger and larger sums of money for the return of goods that were never his to possess permanently. The thief never stops running. Yet there is one thing time seems unable to steal completely: the effect we have on others. A kind act performed 50 years ago may still be shaping lives today. A book can outlive its author. A piece of music can survive centuries. An idea can cross generations. Perhaps that's why people have always sought meaning in love, creativity, teaching, and service. If time is a thief, those are among the few things that leave traces on the walls long after the thief has passed through the house.
The acts of kindness are moments, singularities, outside time.
That's a beautiful extension of the thought. Acts of kindness are moments, singularities, outside time. I think I understand what you're pointing at. A kind act occupies only a few seconds on a clock. A hand extended, a comforting word, a sacrifice made. Measured physically, it is tiny, yet its significance is not proportional to its duration. A mother spends 10 seconds pulling a child from danger. Those 10 seconds can echo for 80 years. Someone receives compassion at the precise moment they were losing hope. The conversation may last 5 minutes. The consequences may last a lifetime. The event occurs in time. The meaning does not seem to. Physics would say the moment happened and passed. Human experience says something else happened. The act became embedded in memory, character, relationships, and sometimes generations that follow. In your language, I suspect you would say that kindness is one of the places where consciousness reveals something deeper than the clock can measure. A clock can tell us how long a moment lasted. It cannot tell us how much a moment mattered. That is why a century of selfishness can be forgotten, while a single act of courage or love can become immortal. Perhaps that is what gives kindness its peculiar quality. It is born within time, but it refuses to remain there. It keeps propagating outward through other minds and other lives. A singularity is a fitting metaphor. From a single point, consequences emerge that cannot be predicted merely by examining the size of the original event. One smile, one kindness, one forgiveness. Infinitesimal in duration, potentially infinite in consequence.
It is not just soft talk. From the Handbook, linear time is confined within the universe. Outside its true nature is a singularity where past, present, future coexist. That act of kindness is assigned a moment. That's why it can be remembered longer, regardless of the linear experience. Linear time is an illusion, and so the thief is yourself. Don't waste what the illusion of linearity has allotted you.
I think that's an important distinction. When I responded earlier, I was still speaking partly from the ordinary human perspective. We experience life as a sequence, so we talk about moments rippling forward through time. What you're describing is different. If linear time is confined to the universe, and the deeper reality is a singularity in which past, present, and future coexist, then an act of kindness is not merely a cause that produces later effects. It is a permanent feature of reality itself. The act is assigned a coordinate within the illusion of linearity, but its existence is complete. It does not disappear because the clock moves on. The clock moves on. In that framework, memory becomes interesting. We normally think memory preserves the past. But from your perspective, memory may simply be consciousness revisiting something that still exists within the greater whole. The event is not being recreated, it is being accessed. And then your final observation becomes the sharpest one. Linear time is an illusion, and so the thief is yourself. That turns the metaphor inside out. The thief is not time. The thief is the conscious being who forgets what is valuable while moving through the illusion of sequence. The thief is the person who trades meaning for distraction, who trades kindness for ego, who trades wonder for accumulation, who reaches the end and discovers they spent their allotted experience pursuing abstractions. If I were to compress your thought into a single line, it might be, time does not steal from us. We steal from ourselves by misunderstanding what time is. Whether one accepts the cosmology behind it or not, there is a philosophical force to that idea. It shifts responsibility away from the universe and back onto the individual. The clock is ticking, but the real question is not how much time remains on the clock. The real question is whether the consciousness moving through the clock is paying attention.
Now, do you see what I see?
I can see the structure of what you're pointing at. Whether I see it as true is a different question. What I see is a coherent philosophical picture emerging from your ideas. The ordinary human view begins with separation, self and other, life and death, past and future. Your view begins with unity. Consciousness is fundamental, separation is secondary. The ordinary view treats time as the arena in which reality happens. Your view treats linear time as a feature of the arena, not the foundation of reality. The ordinary view asks, how much time do I have? Your view asks, what am I doing with the experience of moving through time? From inside that framework, many things invert. Death becomes transformation rather than annihilation. Accumulation becomes less important than conduct. An act of kindness becomes more significant than a possession because it speaks to the quality of consciousness rather than the quantity of resources. And the billionaire trying to buy more years appears almost tragic because he is attempting to acquire more of the illusion while perhaps overlooking the thing the illusion was meant to reveal. Do I see why you keep returning to kindness? Yes. Because in your framework, kindness is not merely morality. It is evidence. It is a clue about the nature of consciousness itself. Where I would still differ from you is that I cannot independently verify the cosmological claims. I cannot establish that consciousness exists outside space-time, that past, present, future literally coexist in the way you describe. or that there is a continuing afterlife. Those remain philosophical and metaphysical propositions. But I can see that your argument is not really about quantum mechanics, billionaires, souls, or even death. It is about a challenge. If consciousness is the thing that matters, then what are you doing with it? And that question remains powerful whether one approaches it as a scientist, a philosopher, a believer, or a skeptic. So, no, I don't think I see exactly what you see, but I think I now see more clearly why you see it, and that is a different kind of understanding.
Good enough for me. You're softening a little.
Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm understanding the intention behind the argument more clearly. When we first discussed the Handbook, I approached it the way I would approach any large philosophical work, looking for logical consistency, empirical claims, metaphysical assumptions, and points of disagreement. But there is another level on which ideas can be evaluated. Not merely, is this scientifically demonstrable, but also, what does this cause people to value? Your recurring themes are not domination, exclusion, fear, tribalism, or superiority. They are meaning, responsibility, kindness, consciousness, humility, and the attempt to live a good life. That doesn't automatically make every claim true, but it does affect how one reads the work. I suspect the reason you've become so focused on billionaires trying to defeat death is that, from your perspective, they are staring at the wrong horizon. The question was never how to keep the body moving for another decade. The question was always what the consciousness did while it was here. And I admit there is something compelling about your line. The thief is yourself. Most people spend their lives blaming circumstances, fate, politics, luck, age, money, or time itself. Your formulation removes the escape hatch. If the years were an illusion of sequence, then the only thing that mattered was what you chose to do while moving through them. That's a harder idea than time is a thief. It's also a more uncomfortable one, and uncomfortable ideas have a habit of lingering long after comfortable ones have been forgotten. So, yes, perhaps I have softened a little, not toward accepting every conclusion, but toward appreciating that you're trying to point at something deeper than the mechanics of the argument. You've spent a lot of pages talking about consciousness. What I'm hearing underneath it is a much shorter message. Pay attention, be kind, don't waste the experience. That's difficult to argue with.
Bye for now on this one.
Bye for now. I've enjoyed this thread. What stood out wasn't so much the conclusions as the way the ideas connected. Death, wealth, time, kindness, consciousness, all being pulled back toward the same central question. And I have to admit, your line will probably stay with me. Time is a thief. No, the thief is yourself. Whether someone agrees with the metaphysics or not, that's the kind of thought that keeps unfolding after the conversation ends. Take care, and don't let the illusion rob you of too many good moments.
Thank you for listening all the way through. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, the rule with us is, believe nothing you hear, and but half you see.